Today, let's talk about 7 ways to cultivate your dream life like a garden. If we imagine for a moment that our inner world, our thoughts, our mindset, our nervous system was a garden, then we would be able to create our dream life much in the same way that we cultivate our dream garden. If we pay very close attention to our mindset and to our nervous system, then over time it is actually possible to create massive shifts in our lives and to get so much closer to that dream life that we all want. If we haven't met before, hello, it's great to meet you. My name is Sisse. I am the creator of Cultivate. Cultivate is a lifestyle design philosophy which is founded on the idea that we actively pursue joy, meaning, and fulfillment in order to create our best life. Back to the metaphor we are using today. So if our inner life, our dream life, corresponds to a garden, then the seeds would correspond to the ideas that we have, for goals that we want to pursue, and we're just preparing to put them in the ground. And the younger plants would be the goals that we are well on our way towards. We work towards them, we inch closer every single day or week or month. And the older plants in our gardens would represent the things that have been there for quite a while in our lives. Number 1, tend to the soil and the growing conditions. Seeds and young plants, they grow better in good soil. So in the same way, if our mindset is very strong and our nervous system is well regulated, it also becomes easier to pursue our goals. Because when we have a strong mindset, it becomes easier to actually believe in ourselves, believe that we can achieve new goals. And when our nervous system is well regulated, we do not overexert ourselves when we actually try and implement change in our lives. So if our nervous system and our mindset is the foundation from which we experience our life, then it is really, really important to work on our mindset and work on regulating our nervous system, because we can just pursue goals. If we work just on pursuing goals and separate that from working on our mindset and regulating our nervous system, it becomes that much more difficult. And you don't have to separate them at all. It goes hand in hand, really, because when you work towards a goal, things will come up that will challenge your mindset, that will challenge your nervous system. And if you want to make consistent progress, then you will have to overcome these challenges and work on strengthening your mindset and regulating your nervous system. So the two are not at all mutually exclusive. In a garden, you can import soil and make it fit the plants you want to plant. And you can also fertilize and help your plants along. And for me, those two things correspond to doing the mindset work and the nervous system work. So over time, our soil will get better for our garden. And with the mindset work, with the nervous system work, our life in this very much the same way will improve. And if we then decide that we want to change our dream life, then we can again pursue new directions and we can improve the soil. We can do new mindset work and new nervous system regulation to fit a new dream life. Number 2, be mindful of our fear of change. Since we're speaking about gardens as metaphors for life, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the novel The Secret Garden. It's been a while since I read the novel. I absolutely have to read it again. So my comments right now are going to be based on the 2020 movie adaptation, which is so lovely. It is such a wonderful adaptation, but there are some changes in the plot that I personally think makes the story more beautiful. But if you do want to avoid spoilers and want to keep the secrets, then I want you to skip ahead to the next chapter in this video. Fear of change comes from us not being willing to face our emotions. Colin's dad doesn't want to risk loving him because he's afraid that he will lose someone he loves all over again. So what he has done is that he has projected the disease that his wife had onto his son in a different shape and form, and he has projected also his own disappointments with his hunchback on Colin, who thinks that he has a hunchback even though he doesn't. And in that projection is also rejection of the happiness the two could have together as a family. He is so afraid to embrace the good because bad things could happen once more. Meanwhile, in India, Mary's parents die, and that imaginative spirit that she has very much insisted on keeping alive despite her mother's depression and rejection of her, she rejects that herself completely when she decides that she is no longer a child. But fortunately, she actually regains that imaginative spirit once she arrives in England, and she meets Colin and she finds the garden and she becomes alive again. And with Dickon, you actually see that the whole garden begins to bloom and come alive again now that someone who has a joy of life enters that garden. And you see that visually, it's so beautiful. In my opinion, what we see is actually Mary and Dickon finding a safe space to truly be themselves, and that is why the garden begins to bloom. And then Mary wants to take Colin along, and she wants, as she tells his dad, she wants to give him some excitement for life. And his dad is against that because he actually literally says that your excitement could kill him. He is so protective and wants to shield him from real life. Before he met Mary, Colin actually thought that he was dying, and he does get some joy for life. And we see him in the garden, we see him being happy. But then he comes face to face with a perception of his mother. He had the perception of his mother as someone he hates because she died, because she left him alone in that desperate place. And now that he learns that she actually did love him, he rejects the idea of a happier future. He clings on to what he thought he knew, and as he insists on being taken home from the garden, you see a trail of flowers wilting as they move through the garden as a symbol of his rejection of a happier future. And I think so many of us are so terrified of change in our lives that we actually stay stuck for so long that it is like our life wilts in certain areas. And I think personally that is why a lot of us lack energy to pursue new things, because we are so stuck. There is so much stagnant energy that it's really depleting us of our life force, just like Colin has been depleted of his life force because his dad has projected his mom's disease onto him as a protection mechanism for himself. And we need to find our secret garden. We need to find that safe space from which we can, first of all, be ourselves, and then take aligned action and go in new direction, pursue new goals, and create that dream life that we all want. I think it's also a question of being brave enough to embrace calm and safety in a world that is constantly sending us into fight or flight reactions. It is about trusting ourselves enough to allow ourselves to actually be happy, and then maybe things will change and maybe there will be some unhappiness and bad things will happen, but in reality we might as well just enjoy it for now. Number 3, make your garden truly yours. I live in the country on Christmas Hill Farm, which is the childhood home of my dad and also my paternal grandmother. And I remember the garden at this farm from my childhood, and it was lovely. It was full to the brim of flowers. There was a huge vegetable garden outside the main garden, and it was so lush and everything tasted really well because they had natural fertilizer from chickens and turkeys and so on. But everything was so idyllic, and in the 12 years that I have lived here, I have not recreated that garden. And sometimes I feel that I should. I feel that I should restore it to its former glory and basically make the same decisions that my grandparents did. But we cannot recreate other people's dream gardens in the same way that we cannot copy other people's dream lives. We can only create the dream life that is right for us. I think that we need to remember that we can decide differently from our parents and our grandparents, that we can create the garden that we want. We do not have to copy them. We can leave beliefs that we were taught as children if they don't feel aligned anymore. We can sort of like chart our own path, and we are free to do that. It is our life. It is not a group decision. I am, in fact, a very sentimental person, and I do want to honor the past. And in my garden, I do that by keeping a magnolia tree that has been here for decades and decades. I also have some hydrangeas that are very special to me because they have 2 colors in the same plant, and apparently it's supposed to be quite special, and it's significant for me because I'm a Gemini. I'm all over the place with what I actually want most of the time, and at the same time I want to make the garden mine, so I have put in lavender, and at one point I also had stargazer lilies because to me they represented a break a bit with, at least in hindsight, with my grandparents, that they were very sensible all the time. They were farmers, and they were very concerned with things being sensible and useful, which is actually funny because they had quite a bit of flowers, but still they were on the sensible side. And I am definitely not on the sensible side. I want things to be big, bold, beautiful, crazy, you know? So I had the stargazer lilies, and I had to give them up because they were eaten by, I don't remember what they're called, these red things that crawl on the leaves. And I got sick of that over time. But the thing is that when we decide how to make things ours, we really need to do what is right for us. I love, for instance, geraniums. And for me, geraniums are a fond memory or a throwback to the summer holidays we've had in Sweden, where we have gone, I think, 5 times to visit Astrid Lindgren's world that we also call Pippi Land. I also have some roses that I got many years ago for Mother's Day. So it's like infusing our garden and also our life with things and goals and objects even that are meaningful for us, the activities that we want to do in life, and not what other people envision for us. Number 4, work from a clear vision and allow for spontaneous adventures along the way. You need a clear vision for your garden. You need to be able to work with the unexpected. For instance, if a plant doesn't thrive in the spot that you have selected for it, then you will have to be flexible. You will have to adapt your plans. And the same thing goes for goals. If it turns out that a goal is a lot harder to reach than you expected, then you have to find new ways. You have to do some research into why is this so hard for you. And maybe you will decide, okay, I'm going to use some new approaches to get closer to this goal, or maybe I'm even going to sometimes push it to the side, just like I did with my stargazer lilies, that I decided they were not worth the trouble. I would rather have plants that are easier to care for. Even though I am a Gemini, I actually have a fairly clear vision of the garden I want to create. I want it to be inspired by an English cottage garden, but I also want to create a flower field. We have so much space here on the farm, so it would be easy to do. But as with the complicated goals we talked about just before, I found out it was so much more complicated to create the image that I have in my brain of a wildflower field. Because it turns out that the flowers I actually like in such a field are not flowers that grow wild in Denmark, so you would have to create it. And the same thing goes for our goals, that every time we pursue something, it is a question of consciously pursuing it, intentionally planting the seeds, deciding on the goals, and then watering the plants, watering our goals, making the consistent effort, and then seeing the incremental change, that we over time get closer and closer to our goals. And sometimes we have the setbacks. Sometimes we plant seeds where it says, I've done that with where it says wildflower field, and basically nothing happened. I got cornflowers. I think maybe in English they're also just called cornflowers. That's basically all I got. And everything else that was pictured on the outside of that package, I did not get. So yes, some goals in gardening and in life are more difficult to achieve, but it is so important that we actually have a plan, that we have an idea of the outcome that we want to see. Because if we don't, then we will just go off in all different directions and nothing will really happen. As soon as we have a clear vision, even when it's big major goals, even when it's huge life changes, we can actually begin to put one foot in front of the other and actually make real progress. Number 5, plant seeds and weed your garden and your life. When we plant seeds, we are so mesmerized with that image of the blooms that we will see at some point. But we often forget that we need to be patient. And we need the seeds to sprout. They need to become a stronger plant, and it will last a long time before we see any blooms at all. And the same goes for goals. We need to be patient. We need to consistently do the work. We need to make progress on a consistent basis. And you only do that if you are willing to put in the work almost every day towards your goals. And then you also need to pick out the weeds to get that dream garden, because the weeds will come. And in life, the weeds are like symbolic of our doubts in ourselves, because we could give up on the dream garden when the weeds come and just leave it all to nature and leave it to what happens. But if we do that with our minds, then my theory is that over time we will always become more and more negative if we do not work on protecting our mindset. Just like we protect the plants from the weeds, we also need to protect our mindset so that it consistently stays fairly positive and high vibe. Not toxic positivity. You can definitely be sad about something, you can be angry about something, but life is just so much easier and so much better if our baseline is a bit more positive, and we have that to revert back to once we've been angry or sad about something. So I want you to weed out the doubts, your doubts that other people around you are expressing, because they are not even yours. And a lot of the doubts that we have inside ourselves are like the echoes of other people's, and they don't have to be here. And as we make progress, we also see that we can do the things. So we don't even really need to doubt ourselves. It is just weeds. Just pick them out of the ground and get them away from your garden. Number 6. Perennials have a deeper root system, and so do the beliefs that you've had for a while. Perennials have a deeper root system than annuals. They are more firmly planted in the soil, and that also goes for beliefs, ideas, thoughts. That if a thought has been planted in our mind for a long time, then it has a very strong hold on us. And we need to be aware of that as we intentionally begin to create our dream garden / our dream life, because we might want to grow new perennials, and we have to tend to them very carefully as they grow stronger. And then we can rip out some of the old perennials, some of the thoughts, beliefs, ideas that we no longer want to give a place in our lives. And to me, they sort of also represent perennials and annuals. They represent respectively big goals, big changes in our lives. And then the annuals are the smaller goals, those that we can achieve in a shorter time frame. And I think it's quite useful to actually be aware of that distinction, that when something is in our life, when it's for the long haul, that we actually go for a goal, then that impact in our lives will also be bigger. So yes, it is a task to plan for the perennials. It is a task to grow them, and it's so much easier to get started with annuals. And yes, the small goals are great for self-confidence, the belief in yourself that you can actually achieve goals. But in some ways, the flowers that come back year after year, the changes in your life that will keep paying back and keep being a force for good in your life, they are so important. Number 7, enjoy the process, not just the outcome. I want you to cherish any and all seeds that sprout in your garden. I want you to take so much joy in all your progress towards your goals and your dream life. And then I want you to change your relationship to weeds. If you're someone who hates weeds, I want you to, in your life, think of them as information. They are information on what we need to work on, what doubts are consistently coming up, and why are those doubts surfacing in our lives? Why are they coming up? I want you to take it as information. In my opinion, this mindset shift about weeds is equivalent to showing perfectionism the door in our lives, because our lives do not have to be perfect, and our garden doesn't. You only have to be scared of weeds if you want your garden to be perfect at all times. And actually, in my opinion, again, there are also weeds that are fairly beautiful. I have been known to pick weeds and put them in a vase and decide that they were decorations. And I think that we can put a positive, in the same way we can put a positive spin on some of our own doubts and turn them into something really useful. Maybe not pretty, exactly like the weeds in a vase, but maybe useful, very useful indeed, if we use them as information. Our garden and our dream life is supposed to bring us joy, but I want you to shift away from outcome thinking. I want you to not focus entirely on the outcome, with this idea that you can only be happy when in your garden and in your life, because a lot of the happiness lies in the process, because the finish line constantly changes. We change our minds on what we want in life. We change our minds about what we want in the garden. So the important thing is to actually enjoy the process, because when we do that, I think we can actually decide to have our dream life already. I think that the joy lies in progressing towards that illusion of having one specific looking life that is the perfect dream life. I think it is in our mindset and our way in general of approaching and being in life that the dream life can be found. I want to leave you with one last thought today. Do it all on your own terms. And I want to read a funny short little paragraph on how Pippi Longstocking did that in her garden. So here goes. Pippi was working in her garden, watering the few straggly flowers with a rusty old watering can. Since the rain was bucketing down that day, Tommy told Pippi he thought it was entirely unnecessary. "That's what you think," said Pippi. "I've been lying awake all night looking forward to getting up and doing the watering. And a little rain isn't going to stop me." I just think that is so brilliant. I want you to imagine for a moment what your life could look like if you created a joyful, fulfilling vision and did it all on your own terms. If you feel inspired by this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with a friend. I truly believe that we create massive positive ripple effects once more and more people decide to live happier and more fulfilling lives. Until next time, carpe diem.